Welcome to the Science of Self-Defense. I'm Charles Closshey. What I teach is an ancient art. How I teach it is cutting-edge, modern science. Over the past 10 or 12 years, doctoral level research has proven how we can conduct learning experiences so that the curve of learning is compressed significantly. What it took an ancient warrior 5 or 6 years to learn and master to a high level, you can now master in a year or less. What they did in 2 years, you can do in a couple months. It's absolutely incredible. We further tweak the curve by using the scientific techniques that focus on what works in the real world. This helps us bring your performance level up a lot faster than you could under other circumstances. Now, self-defense is a legal term. Unarmed personal combat is what you do. The original karate was and is pure unarmed personal combat. It was not and is not and should not be seen as a sport. It was not, is not, and should be seen as a hobby. It is perfect physics. I was privileged to serve in the United States Army. Shortly after I got out of high school, I enlisted. I served in the enlisted ranks, volunteered for everything that came my way. I was nominated and accepted and graduated from Officer Candidate School. It was a privilege to serve. That's where I started learning karate. I've also served as a counterintelligence officer. Field officers out there are expected to be prepared for everything. I have been and still am licensed as a professional bodyguard. I've worked in a dozen countries on 3 continents. I have experience as to what works and what doesn't. I've always carried a gun. I've always practiced karate. What else do I need to say? I learned karate the old way, but I teach it the modern way. I know the differences. I've seen how much faster students can be brought up. I've seen how much faster, using these same guidelines on myself, I can improve. The old way had a lot of coloring from it that was culturally significant, but it did not address pertinent modern issues. We avoid cultural emphasis. Now, we do suggest that you purchase and use a karate uniform. Another thing that I would suggest that you do is acquire a mirror. You probably already have one in the bathroom. It would be good if it has some length to it. But you can pick up a long dressing mirror that hangs on the back of a door from any one of the big box stores. Now, it's not that I really think you care that much about how cool you look while you're doing this, but what I do care about is that when you've watched the instructional video, you've paid close attention to where my hands are, where my feet are, where my head is looking, how my center of balance is, what sort of flexibility I have in the legs. And when you're practicing at home, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and say, wait a minute, that doesn't look like what he's doing. And you've got the luxury now of not having to wait till next week to go back to the karate school, but you can pull it up on your screen and say, oh yeah, I've got that foot too far that way. It's a tremendous learning tool. We are not necessarily at a disadvantage using this type of learning. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is to make sure that the environment that you are learning in and practicing in at home is not a distraction in itself. Don't bring your telephone in with you. Don't try to practice to music. That just doesn't work. It may feel cool, but it doesn't work. If you have a pet that is rambunctious, try to keep them in another part of the house while you're training. Now, we do mild stretching to minimize the discomfort from vigorous training, not because we're going to try to turn you into gymnasts or acrobats or TV stuntmen. It's to help make sure that you don't accidentally over-enthusiastically do something and cause discomfort to yourself. If you injure yourself, you're out of training for a while. That's just all there is to it. Now, if you have prior experience training in a martial sport or a martial art, that's fine. In some ways, you'll find it to be an advantage. In some ways, it can be a stumbling block. I would strongly encourage you to go through our training routine through the steps that's listed. Not because you haven't seen them before, but because some of them we do just a little bit differently for those scientific reasons I explained to you earlier. And because the sequence that we do them in builds these practical self-defense skills faster. We don't really care that there's 23 different stances that you can get into. We don't really care that there's 21 different strikes, 22 different punches, 27 or 28 different kicks that you can learn. You don't need all those. We just need a handful of skill sets. You've heard it said, perhaps, most commonly quoted by Bruce Lee, that he would far rather fight a person that has practiced 1,000 different techniques one time each than to fight a man that has practiced one technique 1,000 times. We stand on an inverted pyramid. The first skill you learn is the most important one. You build 2 on top of that. We'll build 3 on top of that, 4 on top of that. It will make perfect sense to you as we go along. If you jump into the middle of it, it will not make as much sense. If you're ready to start right now, do the video for stretching, right? The one we just talked about, preparations. Watch lesson 1 through one time. Don't try to do it, just watch it. Get a flavor of things. I may say things a little differently. I may have a phrase or a word combination or something that you haven't heard before. Get those things into your subconscious. And then go back and participate in lesson 1. And you'll find that it'll go very, very smoothly. And I'm confident you're going to be happier with the results. I'm looking forward to working with you. I hope you find this a very rewarding situation.